to the Fuel Metering and Quality Advisory Board. Today is October 22nd and it's 10 a.m. Just a general reminder, as always, please leave your microphones on mute when you're not speaking, and when you do need to speak, please state your name before you ask your question or make your statement. And now Angelica will do the roll call and confirm quorum for us.
Yes. Keisha Esqueda.
Here.
Adam Thompson. Seth Stevens.
Here.
Carlos Garza. Mr. Garza. You're muted, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute. I'm right
It's
here.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Terry Hera. Nathan Winkleman.
Here.
Terry Maxey.
Here.
Sergeant Jeffrey Bond. And Presiding Officer Jason Harris.
Here.
You have a quorum, sir.
Fantastic. The first item on the agenda, open government training, everyone's favorite, but it is important that we all follow the rules in that respect. And it's been some time since we've met, so it's a great time to get a refresher. So, Mr. Bostic, turn it over to you, sir.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Bostic. I'm the Assistant GC assigned to the program. Let me share my screen here and we will get started on this presentation. All right. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
All right. Fuel metering and quality. So the three statutes that we'll cover today are the Open Meetings Act under Texas Government Code Chapter 551, the Administrative Procedure Act under Government Code Chapter 2001, and the Public Information Act under Government Code Chapter 552. So first up, we have the Open Meetings Act. You'll want to pay special attention to this one since it's most pertinent to you and this board. Purpose. The purpose of the act is to ensure open and transparent government. The act applies to governmental bodies like this advisory board and requires public notice of the time, place, and subject matter of the meeting. So local government entities are required to post notice of the meeting 72 hours in advance of the meeting. Here, you're in the big leagues as a state board, and so public notice must be posted 7 days in advance of the meeting. All right, some key concepts of the act. Quorum. A quorum essentially means majority. So the Open Meetings Act requires there to be a quorum of members present to take official action as a board. You can't meet without having, you can meet without having a quorum, but you can't take any official action without having a quorum. Next concept is deliberation. This one is pretty intuitive. It's what we're going to be doing later here today. Meetings. So meetings occur when a quorum of a governmental body deliberates regarding public business or policy over which it has supervision or control. So from 3 slides ago, who can tell me what has to happen before the meeting? That's right, it's notice. So the Open Meetings Act requires written notice of the date, time, place, and subject of each meeting held. The TDLR team takes care of posting the notice for the meetings. But the important thing for you to remember here is that you may not engage in discussion about a subject that is not included in the posted agenda because that subject has not been noticed. If that does happen, I'll jump in and stop you or interrupt you. And I'm not doing that to be mean. I'm just doing that to look out for you. All right, so you may be asking, what about social functions or conventions where you may all be in the same place? Is that considered a meeting if you have a conversation? So under the Open Meetings Act, a meeting occurs when a quorum of members deliberate on an issue within your jurisdiction. And remember, those meetings have to be noticed and open to the public. So this doesn't mean, since you're a 9-member board, this doesn't mean that 5 of you can't talk to each other at a conference lunch table, but it does mean that you can't talk about board business at that lunch table. So how about them Cowboys is fine, but motor fuel metering quality is off limits. Okay, key points. The broad takeaway is that if you're outside of a properly noticed meeting and 5 or more of you are all chatting, you need to be especially aware of what you're talking about and take care not to violate the act by discussing board business. This may seem like something that is unlikely to happen because you aren't all together in the same room often, but you have to be aware, beware of the walking quorum. What is a walking quorum? A walking quorum is when a minority of members engage in a discussion about official business and then communicate those discussions to another member so that a quorum is then formed. So while the initial discussion may have been less than a quorum, the subsequent communication to other members could then form a quorum and violate the Open Meetings Act. So let's get into some examples here. Let's say a 5-member advisory board. We have 2 members exchange phone calls, emails, and research on an issue that is before the board. One of those members then forwards that exchange to a 3rd member. By including that 3rd member, they have now engaged in a walking quorum and violated the Open Meetings Act because they deliberated on the issue without it being properly noticed, because it was 3 members. Places where walking quorums can commonly occur, or scenarios where they can commonly occur, is on conference calls, video conferences, discussions in the hallways outside of meetings, emails and text messages. And now you have to be especially aware with online comment sections in apps like Twitter and Facebook. You have to be aware of posting and having discussions in those comments. So some best practices to avoid the walking quorum. Don't discuss board business in small groups and then share that with other members. Don't send emails or text messages to a quorum of members about board business, even if each message is sent to the member individually. Don't create posts on social media about board business. And don't ask board members for feedback on board business outside of a public meeting. This is often called polling, and it becomes a walking quorum as soon as one member tells another member how the rest of the members are going to vote. So if I tell Chairman Harris, board members X, Y, and Z are voting yes on this, I'm starting to create a quorum because I'm communicating that deliberation to another member. Okay, guidelines for our meeting today for the open session. Remember that you're limited to discussing what's on the agenda because that's what's been properly noticed. So if you go beyond that, I will do my best to jump in to guide us back onto the path, but ultimately it's your responsibility. If there are any public comments today, I don't believe that we have any, but if there are any public comments, the chair may set reasonable limits on those commenters. Members of the public may raise a subject that is not on the agenda. However, any board discussion on the subject must be limited to proposing that topic for a future meeting, not discussion on the topic that's not been noticed. Okay, some best practices for the meeting today. Limit discussion to specific agenda items. Avoid wandering off onto other subjects that have not been noticed. Don't respond to subjects raised by members of the public unless they're on the agenda. And if you want something on a future agenda, you communicate that to us, and then we can place that on a future agenda for consideration. Okay, now we get to the bad stuff. So I told you what not to do. Here's what happens if you do it anyway and violate the Open Meetings Act. First, civil penalties. So any interested person has standing to file suit to stop actions that are taken in violation of the Open Meetings Act. Also, if a court determines after the fact that an action was taken in violation of the act, that action is voidable. We don't want to undo all of our hard work here. So criminal penalties. So criminal penalties for violating the act range from a Class C misdemeanor up to the penalty you see here, depending on the violation. If you want to look at those are found in Government Code Section 551.143 through 146, but hopefully you will never need to look at those. All right, so if you remember anything about this presentation this morning, remember these two things. Avoid communications that involve a quorum of members about official business outside of a proper meeting. And two, during the meetings, stick to the topics on the agenda. Here's some more resources if you'd like to do some more investigation on your own time. All right, third of the way through here. So now we're on to the Administrative Procedure Act. The APA governs how state agencies make our rules that implement the laws passed by the legislature and other policy. It provides the minimum standards of practice for state agencies and public participation in the rulemaking process. What is a rule? Under the APA, a rule is defined as a general statement from an agency that implements or interprets law and policy. A rule can also be a general statement that describes the procedural requirements of the agency. So generally speaking, it's what you have to do and how you have to do it. Those things can be considered a rule. Statements regarding internal matters of the agency that don't affect private rights are not considered rules. However, any change, repeal, or amendment to existing rules is considered a rule under the APA. So it's not just new, it's any change. It's considered a rule. The sources for rulemaking, so legislative changes after the session, suggestions from advisory board, suggestions from TDLR staff, changes that arise from our 4-year rule review process that we'll mention later, and also rule petitions. So what is a rule petition? The APA allows for interested persons to petition TDLR to make a rule. An interested person under the statute is anyone who meets these criteria. So a Texas resident, business entity located in Texas, governmental subdivision in Texas, or a public or private organization that is not a state agency, but is located in Texas. Now for an overview of the rulemaking process, here's a nice flow chart. So this is from start to finish. Note that this is the process that we at TDLR use, and other agencies may differ slightly, although some of these things are required by the APA. Also, in the case of rules that are implementing bills from the legislature, we may vary from this structure as allowed by the APA to meet certain statutory deadlines. But generally speaking, this is the process that we follow. Okay, rule review, as we mentioned before. This process is required by the APA. Every 4 years, we have to evaluate each rule set to make sure the rules are still necessary and essential to achieve their goal. The next review for this program will be in 2028, so we've still got a while. And here's some more resources for the APA. As always, you can call us with any questions. Right, on to the last one, the Public Information Act or Open Records Act. So the PIA is intended to allow public access to information about the affairs of government and public officials and employees. It makes all documents and records relating to official business open to the public with certain exceptions. The public information includes electronic communication that exists on any device if it is connected with official agency business. The act is construed liberally in favor of granting these requests for information. So what does this mean for you? If you receive a written request for records that looks like a public information request, you need to forward that to Office of General Counsel immediately. You can't ask the requester why they're asking for information. Just go ahead and forward that to us if you happen to get one. If you receive a request from the General Counsel Open Records team, please respond to them immediately because the time we have to respond to these requests under the statute is very short. So it's important that we act on them immediately. Remember, the general rule here is that information is subject to disclosure. However, some information is exempted by the statute and it must be redacted. This includes dates of birth, email addresses, and the other sensitive information you see here. And here's some more resources for the PIA. And that's the end. That's all I have for you this morning.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody have questions on those topics? Okay. Thank you very much for the refresher. All good information, very important. I think the only thing we have to vote on today is essentially the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. You know, if that was 14 months ago, I'm sure you all remember like it was yesterday. You've been provided a copy. I assume you've gone over it. I think we'll go ahead and move forward with that vote. We have a quorum. I don't think Adam and Terry would really mind if we went ahead and voted on these minutes. So let's go ahead and move forward.
Actually,
with
real quick, Mr. Harris, I do see that Mr. Hare is online, so
Oh,
there's
great.
acknowledgement that Terry Hare is here. So I will make sure to call on him when we vote.
that. Okay, great. Any questions on the minutes? Any comments on the minutes? Okay, let's move forward with the vote. I need a motion.
A motion to approve last year's minutes, Terry Maxey.
Carlos Garza, I second that motion.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, I'll do a quick roll call vote. Keisha Esqueda,
Agreed.
Seth Stevens,
Yes.
Carlos Garza,
Yes.
Terry Hare,
Yes.
Nathan Winkleman,
Yes.
Terry Maxey,
Yes.
and presiding officer Jason Harris.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Next is public comment. I'm understanding we didn't receive any public comments for this meeting.
That is correct, sir.
Okay, move past that agenda item. Next up are staff reports. We'll start with the licensing division. That would be Laura Hernandez.
Good morning, board members. My name is Laura Hernandez. I'm one of the licensing managers over our tools team that handles licensing applications and renewals for the fuel metering and quality program. I presented for today's meeting the statistics for fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025. Since the time of this report, there was no quarter numbers for fiscal year 2026 yet. So you'll see the different license types for this program. We have the service technicians, the service companies, suppliers, distributors, and wholesalers, and the device facilities. You'll see the numbers of how many applied. If there was an online option for renewals or applications, that would be indicated. The NA is not applicable, meaning that those particular options are not online for this particular program yet. I'm not sure if there's any questions regarding the statistics portion of that report.
Laura, how substantial is the reduction in service technician licensing from year to year? I don't, you know, there's not an overall trend here. We just have 2 data points, but I'm curious if that drop is, you know, related to anything in your mind.
don't really see a trend. I will say that when this program moved over, we had some service technicians that were licensed from the previous agency the program was with for 5 years, and those licenses have just finally, have expired since then. So that was right at the end of 2025. That 2025 is when those last ones. So I'm thinking that that might have been part of that reduction, is that those that had that license for 5 years, they just didn't renew. They just expired out.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to keep an eye on that. It would be problematic for that number to continue to decline while the number of facilities and devices continues to increase. So keep an eye on
No, I understand. And they were
Is-
5-year licenses previous, so that's why that, since that 5 years is up, there could be a significant amount that just didn't renew or didn't come
Thank you.
over to this agency.
Thank you very much.
Is it an annual renewal?
For the service technicians, they're 2 years.
2 years, okay.
Jason, Terry Maxey, I know last year, if I remember right, there was someone expressed concern about the tests, whether it was difficult or whatever. Is there anything about failure rates on the technician tests that might sort of forecast that we're, having difficulty getting people to pass, or any information about that?
I think that was Adam.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I don't particularly have that information, but our education examination department may be able to have some. I know on our website they do post some failure rates, some testing information. So they may have some more information regarding that aspect of the testing for the service technicians.
Laura, Carlos Garza here. With regards to service companies, in that new column, can you shed some light on that? Like in 2024, there was 16 new companies. In 2025, there's 5. So what's driving that reduction or lesser amount of companies?
So I think that the reason that is the difference is so much from what I've looked at, is that when this program moved over, we didn't have a lot of the service companies. They failed to renew with us, and so it passed their renewal, and they had to reapply. And so technically they were renewal, but because they were passed over that 18-month period, they chose to reapply. So it probably would have been a higher number of renewals than it was actually new applications. And so they've all come into compliance. And so now that number's dropping, and we should hopefully, with fiscal years going forward, we should have, it should start to taper off and be real numbers.
All right, so that sounds like a timing issue.
Correct. I just think that in FY24, when that came about, that they just weren't aware of the renewal or didn't come into play. But I'm thinking that hopefully that number will be more accurate, say for fiscal year 2026. But we'll keep looking at that number. But I know there was a lot of renew of applications rather than renewing because they had went over the time limit.
Got it. Thank you, Laura.
Laura, this is Terry Hara. I do know that I think we'll see some reduction, so I wouldn't be as alarmed as because of the acquisitions of pump companies going from one entity under folded into one to another. I know of at least 4 acquisitions in the last 6 months it's happened. So the service companies would renew one if they were bought out. Is that correct?
Right. Correct. That is correct. It's not due to not meeting regulations or anything that there was this drop off or not being able to meet the requirements. I think it was just because of that fiscal year 2025. And they reapplied rather than renewing or changed entities.
Any more questions about the metrics? Right. I think you wanted to provide us an update on a new system.
Correct. Sure. In our last board meeting, there was a request for an update on the online system for renewals. for this particular program, any enhancements. And while it is still in use for the devices for renewals, it has not been updated to add anything new as far as online applications or enhancing the renewal system at this time. However, the entire agency is on a project to develop our new licensing system called TDLR Core, and you'll see some information about that in my report. We're really excited because it'll bring a aspect of actually being able to apply online rather than mailing in that paper. Enhancements to the renewal as far as adding devices, reducing devices during that renewal process instead of having to mail that in, and updating contact information, point of contact. And so we're really excited to be able to get that option. So we're all working together for all our programs to get that online. It does expect it to run through 2028. There's different waves, and so there will be communication sent out via email, via our website, under the program page for fuel meter and quality. So you all can take a look at that and look at notices as we start to get the fuel meter and quality program into that system. And I'm happy
Very
to
cool.
answer any other questions regarding licensing.
Is there any, has there been any discussion around the ability to download the actual license from the online system?
Not for the current system. There's been different requests made for the new system, and we're still working through those requests. But any kind of feedback like that, we are taking back to our executive to see how we can incorporate any kind of any request like that into the new system.
Do we need to
Laura-
make that a formal process from the board, or can Keisha's comment service as that?
We participate in weekly meetings, and so anytime we get feedback, I escalate it up to our director, escalates up to executive. We're always asking for everything, anything and everything to enhance it. We are definitely asking for, and that has been a question that's come up before. So I know our executive staff is looking into that.
Laura, Terry Maxey, I brought this up a year ago, and I've gotten a lot of feedback that the system is pretty arcane right now, and I can imagine what's involved in implementing a new system. Is there a way that we can get some detailed expectations, or maybe some you mentioned you were going to talk about it, but I think what I'd be looking to sort of take back and let people know is that these are some of the enhancements that are coming, even if it's a year or two down the line. I think the system's got some real deficiencies right now that make it very, very difficult to interface with. So any information that's kind of forward looking would certainly be helpful.
Right. And that is like the online application process, making changes to those renewals. All of that is going to be, and we're looking to have as much online as possible. We are trying to go away from the paper, the snail mail, the checks, the money orders. So we are definitely trying to everything online, which I know that this industry is really likes. Can I do it online? Is there anywhere I can upload this? And so those downloading, invoices and not having to request emails, and following up with that and getting that. So all of those things, as soon as this program, we're not like we're going to do, let's just do renewals online, or let's not do online applications. As much as possible, we're trying to get up front and do it all online. And this is going to incorporate everything. And as that information comes about, like I said, it'll be on our website. We're sending out email notifications to all of our constituents and customers.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you very much, Laura.
Okay, thank you.
I'm calling now the Customer Service Division. That would be Patricia Martinez Castellan.
Good morning, advisory board members. I'm Patricia Martinez Castellan, the Customer Service Manager, and I'll be sharing our division statistics for fiscal years 2025 and 2026. In fiscal year 2025, our contact volume remained consistent month to month, with the majority of customer interactions handled via phone. Email volume remained low throughout the year. And as of September for the new fiscal year of 2026, we've captured a total of 335 contacts. We continue to work closely with the licensing and compliance teams to ensure that all customer inquiries are addressed efficiently. That concludes the customer service report. If anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Patricia?
I think I might have asked this last time, but this doesn't include the online module that lets you email the customer service division online. It just is direct emails using your email address.
So it really just depends on the nature of the email. For example, if the email is submitted containing an attachment, that will directly be routed to either the licensing tools team to assist. Anything that's more of a general inquiry, that's more of the type that we handle. And then we forward it out just depending on the nature of the email.
Okay.
Good question. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Appreciate it. Enforcement Division. Reinforcement Division, we have Tony Reed and Jessica Hurtado.
Good morning. My name is Tony Reed. I prosecute fuel metering and quality cases, and I'll present the enforcement staff report on fuel metering and quality cases. I'm going to use FMQ from here out because it rolls off the tongue a little easier, and I'm not going to try to say it 5 times fast either. Under statistics, we're presenting fiscal year 24 and 25. And we have the TDLR overall statistics to give you a little bit of comparison. The performance measures show the overall time it takes to handle cases. We've got a bit of a backlog. Criminal history, not much criminal history activity in this program because most of the people most of the licenses are companies rather than people. I was going to distinguish this by saying people and not gas pumps rob you, and then I looked at the price of diesel. We get the source of complaints, mostly consumer complaints. And as I said, we've got a bit of a caseload. We did increase the number of agreed orders. This is where the respondent agrees to a penalty or sanction. We had an increase in the number of default orders, which is a little disturbing, but some licensees either fail to keep their address current or simply ignore orders. And if they ignore them, we can go ahead with the default. Penalties and consumer remedies, sorry. We try to negotiate reimbursement for damages from contaminated fuel. We've been fairly successful. We got in 24, we got over 100,000, and in 25, we got over 300,000. This is money that went back to the consumer to pay for damages to the vehicle. Licenses with disciplinary sanctions, this is suspensions and revocations. We kind of try to avoid that because it puts somebody out of business. And so far we haven't had to do that a lot. Most of the cases are actually resolved without disciplinary action, a monetary payment or a sanction. We can use, instead of a disciplinary action, we can use a warning letter if the if the location has a good record and they brought themselves into compliance, we can issue a warning letter. We also use warning letters to get reimbursements. Instead of a penalty, if they reimburse the consumer, we will consider a warning letter. The violations at opening, fuel contamination is the most common. But we've also got way too many unregistered devices, and we have been cracking down on unlicensed activity. Violations resulting in disciplinary action, fuel contamination, is the most common issue. And there are some case highlights of describing how we handled a couple cases. One was unlicensed activity, and the other was pump jump. And I'm available to answer any questions.
Tony, Terry Maxey, just a quick question. You referred earlier to collecting fines that went to help people with damages to the vehicle. And just for clarification, when we've encountered these kind of things, and this, of course, is my business, but I just in general, we'll have insurance that'll reimburse people's costs and things like that. Is that kind of go into the calculus of what's happened if the retailer got water and they took care of it, or are y'all still trying to collect fine money to give back, or can you kind of relate those two things a little bit for me?
Well, whether it's the insurance company or the location, we look for someone to make the consumer whole.
Sure.
And we do that when we get a case. We look to see if there was damage and if it was the station's fault, and then we try to get in touch with the. Usually, we try to get corporate because that gets more done. And explain to them that we expect them to make the consumers whole, and often we'll offer the warning letter instead of a penalty. And especially in cases where there's potentially high penalties, some stations are quite happy to take the warning and pay the consumer. And I'll say most locations take care of this voluntarily. That answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. Thank you. And just follow up on that. Do y'all, is there any change, or can you remind me how y'all are dealing with testing for contamination? Let's say not something like water, which is obvious, but if someone says, well, the fuel wasn't good, or it wasn't 93 octane or something like that, what are y'all doing on that front right now?
We try to get an investigator out as soon as possible, usually a day or two. They take a sample. They've got procedures that meet the NIST standards to gather the fuel sample. It goes to the lab, and then the lab tells us if it meets the criteria, and that could be octane, that could be ethanol, that could be water, anything.
So it's basically a lab-driven process. It's not a sort of anything subjective with a field investigator or anything then?
No, the field investigator does look at the fuel, swirls it, and if there's something obviously wrong, I mean, we don't do any lab work in the field, but if there's something obviously wrong, we're going to ask the station to take the pump out of service or take the tank out of service. And if they do, we continue with our processes. If they don't, we look very closely at a stop sale.
Understand. Yeah, and I think the main with the driver of that sort of line of questioning is the field person maybe not having the experience or having a whole lot of power to, for example, shut something down. That I think that's part of the fear of a retailer, that there's a very official process if it's a serious matter like stopping a sale or something like that.
We do have a process. A stop sale requires some signatures up the chain to the executive director.
Understand. Okay. Thank
We
you.
don't do that many stop sales
Sure.
because most locations do the right thing.
Right.
I do have, this is Terry here. I do have one question to follow up with Mr. Maxey's, because I wasn't clear. You may have said it and I just didn't register. But let's say out of the $300,000 you recovered this year for the consumer, was that just money that y'all negotiated, or are y'all totaling up all the money that the stores voluntarily do and put in that number? Because the number seems awful low. Because I know if we have an incident, it's usually, we're out quite a bit trying to take care of the consumer. So I'm just wondering what that number actually, how you get to 300,000, what's in that.
That is all of the reimbursements that come as a result of our efforts and that we're involved in. When there's a big problem with a tank, not everyone is going to submit a TDLR complaint. So they may be getting their reimbursement. Hopefully they get their reimbursement from the location quickly and they're all taken care of. And we may not even know about that. But
Perfect. That answers my question.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Tony, this is Jason Harris. So there were a set of questions that were put to staff or offered to staff prior to this meeting, in which responses were provided. I don't know how much you had involvement in that, but there was this kind of speaks to investigation process, and so I'm a little bit confused because my assessment is we've got inspectors from 2 different departments potentially showing up. Is the information you're providing only related to enforcement inspectors from the enforcement division? Or is this all encompassing for inspections that might have been performed by the compliance division? And can you help explain why there's that bifurcation and help me out?
The compliance folks are looking at, as I understand it, they look at skimmers, and if they run into a violation, a serious violation, while they're doing that, they can send it over to enforcement to handle.
Well, they're coming up later. I guess they can speak to that aspect of it. But it sounds like the metrics you're providing here are all inclusive. It'd be your own inspections and then anything referred from the compliance division. Is that your assessment?
So Charlotte Melder here, the Compliance Division Director. The metrics that he is sharing are enforcement metrics. If we refer a case to them, that is investigated by them separately. That's completely different. But what we do in our numbers are separate for compliance division. So they are just reporting their enforcement numbers.
Okay, so help me understand the structure then, because as a lay person, well, not lay, but I'm not living in your world as far as how you have things set up administratively. So help me understand why there's inspectors from two different divisions.
So we have inspectors in 3 different divisions at this
Okay.
TDLR. So we have field inspections, which does routine-based, but also risk-based inspections on certain programs. We have, and that is just a regular inspection. The enforcement investigators do an investigation on a complaint that is received. They do not go out of their own accord for any reason. They have to receive a complaint. In compliance, we have technical inspections or investigations where our inspectors or investigators need some sort of certification or extra special knowledge of what they're looking at. For example, I know it's not this program, but the electricians, you need to be a master electrician to know if something is wired improperly, et cetera. So for this program, in order to find a skimmer, you need to know what you're looking for and have that education and knowledge. So we have those technical inspectors in our division who go out looking for different things. So it's important to have that difference and separation between the divisions because they're all looking for different things or have different knowledge or different goals. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, from our point of view as operators, an inspector shows up, right? We don't know what
Right.
division they're from. We would just like the reassurance that whatever procedures they follow are going to be consistent. And so I'm guessing, I'm just assuming that presents a challenge when you have 2 different divisions with 2 different sets of inspectors. You know, are they reading from the same playbook, I guess?
And I can say yes and no. So the importance of having the difference is we go out for different reasons. So an enforcement investigator is going to go out there and look at if the violations that are being alleged are there. If our compliance technical inspector goes out and is looking for a skimmer, they're going to look and see if there are any skimmers. And Ford is about to speak and explain our processes and what we're doing, et cetera. But we each are looking for different things. So we're not going off the same checklist. We're not going off the same guidelines. We're going off of what we're there for.
Okay, well, we can get, I guess, a little deeper in the weeds when we get to the compliance division. I'm just
Sounds
trying to
great.
kind of understand,
understand.
you know, because a lot of the questions that were proffered up were related to, you know, what is that process? And in
Right, and
response, there's a reference to the fuel quality guidelines, and is that an internal document or is that somewhere we can reference it?
Actually, I will let Ford answer that question, but before he answers that question really quickly, I will say that there are reasons that we would go out if there's an enforcement case, so it gets a little muddy. But we've had to separate our responsibilities based on staffing. So we'd love to have more people. We'd love to have, you know, very clear lines, but because we're government, it's not quite as easy as all that. But Ford, if you wouldn't mind jumping in really quickly and answering his question about the guidelines.
Yep, first, Michael Bostic, AGC here. Chairman Harris, if you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and recognize compliance division for F4, and then we can keep going.
Yeah, sure.
Was enforcement done?
Well,
No, enforcement was not done.
I say we table the inspector and division discussion a little bit. Let's because I think there may be some questions on the metrics, and I actually
Sure.
have one. So let me. Go ahead.
This is Terry here. I have one question since I think we're in both areas. Is there a procedure or anything in place that says when a field inspector, which doesn't matter which one goes out, if they are making a recommendation for the store to do something, to take it beyond the store level, because most stores will not, we don't find about the people that take action on that to rectify or explain are not at the store level. We have repeatedly put in our file that all communications have to go to corporate. Is that part of your field inspectors to get back to the office so someone in the office can let corporate know, hey, you're dealing with this, y'all need to deal with this, because the paperwork dies at the store. We never see it. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks later. That's a huge piece of heartburn for us and the consumer.
Yeah, Terry, I want to piggyback on that a little bit because that is the source of some of my questions. You know, in speaking to consistency and what's the procedure. You know, we've seen something similar. You know, sometimes we don't even know an inspection's occurred or there's been a complaint until we get, you know, a letter referencing the FMQ number. Sometimes inspectors will reach out ahead of time to ask for information. So we kind of see the spectrum of potential options, but there's a question about consistency and consistency of approach.
I'm going to hand this over to Jessica Hurtado in the Enforcement Division so she can answer that question and the rest that you have for them.
Thank you, Charlotte. Yes, Jessica Hurtado. I am one of the senior prosecutors here at the Enforcement Division. And as to the questions and answers that were provided in writing, those were answers provided by the investigations manager. So they pertain to our investigations procedures, not necessarily any other division's procedures. Also, as far as communication, we do our best to reach out to the appropriate people. However, we do sometimes have some difficulty with information not being up to date. And so that's where we struggle sometimes as well, is because that information that we have in our database is maybe not as accurate as it needs to be. So we do try our best to make those communications known at the store level and then up the chain when we have that information.
Just a real quick question on that specific point. So when we submit a application for a license, we include both the point of contact information and a responsible party. So are both of those, what is the actual preferred process? Both of those get contacted, or one, the point of contact first and then the responsible official? I mean, how do your inspectors approach that?
That is a great question. I don't know the answer off the top of my head because that would be a question I would need to ask their manager specifically as to who they're contacting, but I can get that information.
Okay, so those are questions I have. Which of those contacts are contacted and then how, right? So I think as technology evolves, we're all relying less and less on actual letters in the mail, right? And so what are those steps that the inspectors take to contact the point of contact or the responsible party for that entity? Is it a phone call? Is it an email? All the above, you know, kind of get those lined out so we have a better understanding of what the preferred processes are.
Gotcha. Yes, we can get that information for you.
And I would assume that I don't know what's in the fuel quality guidelines, so I'm gonna need some help understanding what's in that document. Is that a procedures document specific to the overall process, or is it really more defined to fuel quality complaints themselves? You know, referencing the technical aspects of fuel quality versus the overall complaint inspection process.
Yeah, my understanding is that those are specific to the program and the technical requirements as to how they gather the sample, prepare it for the lab, etc.
Okay. Terry, I don't know. I kind of short circuited you there. Did we answer your specific question? I piggybacked on you, but I think we had the same idea in mind.
No, you're 100% the same idea.
Okay.
It's just that we just got to figure out how we're getting the information so I can communicate it and make sure our contacts are done, because we have really battled that at least 5 times this year, and from the TDLR, and it is not pleasant when it reaches corporate office and the stores voluntarily shut down fuel for 2 weeks, and we discover it because there's no sales volume, and then we're like, why didn't someone tell us? We go out there and we can't find our problem, so we open it back up. it's one of those deals that we want to do the right thing, but we've got to figure out what the right thing is.
And
Right.
I think Tony wanted, I'm sorry, I think Tony had some information as well to add.
Yeah, the investigator talks to the manager on site, and often is the manager on site doesn't want to talk, and it goes to corporate. The investigator does their best to determine the chain of ownership and command. They look up on the Secretary of State website, and they look at the tax documents that might be present. It is a problem that we have because some stations are run under corporate, and the person that we really need to talk to is at corporate, and then some are mom and pop, and the person we need to talk to may not want to talk to us, or we have trouble getting them on the phone or by email.
So
Yeah, Tony, I
this is
think-
Keisha.
Go ahead, Keisha. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. I think this goes back to what was said earlier about when we fill out our application, we're telling you guys who to contact if there's any kind of issue. And so if it's enforcement or compliance, I wouldn't even talk to the manager on site about it. I would, because we would like you to talk to who we're telling you to talk to on the application. So however you could access that database with the contact information that's put on the application, I think that's who you should go to first. And we give a phone number plus an email address for the appropriate person.
Yeah, and further to that point, what is the actual process, right? How are inspectors trained? What guidance are they given to perform their duties, right? That's kind of what we want to know too. So, what's the playbook? Step one, you reach out to the point of contact for the licensee, right? Move on to the responsible party, or is it show up at the site, talk to whoever's there, and then escalate? Those are kind of the examples of what we're interested in knowing. What's the playbook? What is the preferred course of action for complaint inspections? Really, any inspection.
I mean, yeah, going to the Secretary of State and stuff, like that's a whole bunch of work you don't even need to be doing, because you should have the contact information unless the person's not licensed at all. And so, then you're kind of scrambling.
So if I may jump in here, Ford Strawn, manager for our compliance division. So one of the things from the compliance standpoint is we are utilizing the application information, whoever you set for your point of contact, your majority owning parties, the ownership information that's provided to us within that. We are also letting the store know when we're out doing skimmer sweeps or inspections at the time. I will also put out there, and I don't want to take away enforcement's time, but I do want to point out Tim Faskey, who's a supervisor for my FMQ program, and myself, we are liaisons and for this industry. If there are issues y'all are seeing and everything else, please do reach out to us. We're happy to work with our enforcement team, customer service, any of our other divisions, so we can address these issues as they come up. We don't want to necessarily want to have to wait until the next advisory board to hear your pain points on those. So afterwards, I'm happy to give my information to all of y'all so we can make sure we collaborate, and we'll definitely work on getting you as much information on our procedures for this process as well that we can.
Thanks, Ford. Appreciate that. Back to enforcement division. I know we're kind of all over the place here, but any more questions specific for Tony, Jessica, on the enforcement division? Metrics, processes, any of that nature?
And I do apologize. I seem to have lost my video, but I did want to go ahead and give the overview that was requested if y'all are ready for that.
I had a couple questions on the metrics. I
Okay.
think this is Jason Harris. I think Tony may have alluded to the backlog, but I'm just curious if that is the explanation for what I see here. So, number of complaints opened. I think that means not necessarily received, but received, evaluated, and then there was enough evidence to move forward, so the complaint was opened. I think that's what that means. Correct me if I'm wrong. We moved from 1,100 to 646, so that number almost halved between the two fiscal years. But the number of agreed orders, penalty amounts, and other things, agreed orders almost, well, doubled essentially over that same period. So what's the explanation there?
A big part of it is staffing. We've had trouble keeping. We would like 4 lawyers in our transportation group, which includes FMQ, and right now we have 2 and a clerk, a law clerk. So the numbers, especially the throughput, is driven by that.
That would be the average time to close, I would assume, primarily.
Yes.
But with respect to agreed orders, it looks like you've been twice as productive.
Pardon?
So agreed orders went from 74 to 147 with half as many complaints opened. So to me, that means the complaints were more substantive for some reason. It could also mean the inspection process changed. There may be several answers, but it kind of stuck out to me that, you know, we have half as many complaints, but twice as many orders.
Yeah. We're, as I said, we're going after unlicensed activity pretty seriously.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of it, and that's part of it, and the just the cases in the backlog have been there for a while, so they are sometimes they have to be handled a little differently.
I mean, you spoke about unlicensed. It looks like the alleged violations at opening. Okay, so really you want to look at the violation of resulting in disciplinary action, I think, right? Okay, so that number went from 42 to 70. So I think that probably explains a little bit of it as far as the focus. Okay. Any more questions on the metrics similar to that? Okay. Jessica, you wanted to provide some more information? Did I hear that right?
Yes, we still have the enforcement complaint process to present.
Great.
Yes, Jessica Hurtado, a senior prosecutor in the enforcement division. Yes, so we did include a chart that should be in your packet, just a flow chart of the complaint process. So here in the enforcement division, unlike field inspections, who, as Charlotte mentioned, is going out and doing those inspections on a time basis, our process is complaint driven. So when a complaint comes in, we have an intake division. They review the complaint and they make sure that we have jurisdiction over the matter that's being complained about. And we have enough information to send it on to be investigated. And when that occurs, they open up the case and they assign it to the investigator. The investigator is going to interview the witnesses, gather any documents, go on site if necessary, make that contact at the location level, do the fuel test if that's what's necessary, or any other on-site inspection as needed. They're going to take all that information and compile a report. So I want to say what won't happen on site is that they won't be issuing any citations or any penalties on site. That doesn't happen in the enforcement process. And they're not going to shut down any pumps on site. As Tony alluded to earlier, there is a process for the stop sale order, and that has to go through many layers of review, including the attorney's review and then the executive office sign off. What the investigator does do, though, is if they can see that there's a problem visually, they will ask for a voluntary compliance. So that's, up to the location if they want to comply or not. But they're not going to be shutting down a location right then and there. The investigator is going to forward their report on to the prosecutor, who's going to review the information. And there's a couple of different actions that the prosecutor can take at that point. If there's insufficient evidence that a violation has occurred, they can issue a closing letter just to close the case out. If there is a violation that is present, but it's not a violation that affects health or safety, or it doesn't cause consumer harm, then the prosecutor may issue a warning letter. This is not a disciplinary action. It's simply to educate the respondent as to what the rule requires, what was violated, and then letting them know so that they're aware going forward what their obligation is under that rule. The third option is to issue a notice of alleged violation. This is when the violation is serious enough that it needs to go and do it possibly a penalty or a license sanction. So the notice of alleged violation would be sent out, and it includes on there a penalty amount, a full penalty amount, along with a settlement offer. And so this is the chance for the respondent to contact the department and enter into discussions about the alleged violations. If there's things that can be corrected, they can do that, and that can potentially mitigate or lower the penalty. And so those conversations can go forth between the prosecutor and the respondent until a settlement is reached. And in those cases, there would be an agreed order entered. If the respondent never contacts the department, never responds to the notice of alleged violation, then another notice is sent, a notice of default. And if they still do not respond, then a default order can be issued against them for the full amount. And then finally, the third option is to request a hearing, which would go to the State Office of Administrative Hearings. That's a separate state agency. They hear not only TDLR cases, but other agencies' cases. And so that administrative law judge would hear the evidence at a hearing and make a proposal for a decision, making findings of fact, conclusions of law, and a recommendation that would ultimately be decided by the full Commission of Licensing and Regulation during a public meeting. And then from there are other remedies that a respondent may have through the judicial court system to appeal any adverse findings. So that's, I know, a very quick, broad overview, but if you have other questions about the process that we haven't already gotten into, I'm happy to talk about those too.
Jessica, Jason Hurst, great information. I really appreciate this flow chart. Is this codification of previously existing procedures, or is this any of this new as to, current versus maybe a year?
This is, yes. So as of this month, I've been here at TDLR 8 years, and this has been the procedure since I've
Okay,
gotten here.
that was
It's
my
not
feeling.
new.
I just wanted to confirm that with you.
Yes.
I noticed in this document, after you've confirmed there's jurisdiction and there's enough information to open a case, it says a letter is sent to the respondent. Just a letter, or is there any other communication? I think we kind of addressed that a little bit, but I don't know if this
At the
needs
very-
to be updated.
Right. At the very opening of the case, it's just a letter. But then when it gets to that investigator, the investigator is going to be reaching out by email, phone. That initial letter is just to let the person know, the respondent know, hey, we have a case opened.
Okay. And sometimes that's all it says, right? There's not really much additional information.
Yeah.
Here it says, in most cases, a copy of the complaint is attached, but doesn't say in all cases. So what might stipulate whether or not the actual information of the complaint? But the reason I'm asking is because as operators, and I can only speak for me and those others that are operators here in this group can speak to that. You know, we want to know as soon as possible. If we have a problem, we want to know. We're all on the same page. We want to diminish any potential impact customers as soon as we can. So the sooner we know about a complaint, the sooner we can perform our own inspection and stop something bad from happening if it is, right? And so that's the source of the question I have is, you know, how soon, aside from an inspector showing up potentially day after, but up to, 14 days later, are we informed that there's been a complaint? And what's the normal process?
So it's going to depend on the intake section and where they are with their cases. So as the complaints come in, they have to be processed. So there can be some lag time between a complaint being filed and the case being reviewed by our intake. Is that what you're speaking to?
Potentially, I don't know necessarily who does what, but whoever, I guess, sends the letter after the complaint is open.
Yeah. So once that letter is sent, forgive me, I don't know the exact verbiage, but it should have some type of contact information so that you can, as soon as you get that, reach out and to that investigator who's assigned. And if there's not a copy of the complaint, get one. If the investigator hasn't already reached out to you. Now, one thing that is not in the flow chart, but that we do have is our prioritization schedule. And so based on the alleged violations are prioritized, P1, priority 1 being the most serious and priority 3 being the least. And so our investigators have certain timelines that they need to contact respondents by. And those timelines are different for the different priorities. So obviously a priority 1 is going to have a shorter timeline to contact the respondent and the complainant than a priority 3. And so there are different timelines that go along with cases depending on how they've been prioritized.
Is that part of the inspection procedures document, or is that something separate?
It's part of our standard operating procedure.
I'm monopolizing the time here. I'm opening up to other work group members that might have questions on the enforcement process. So just me then, okay. The only other
You're covering, Seth Stevens here. I
Okay,
mean, your
great. I'm speaking
line of
for a bit.
questioning is spot on with what I'd
Okay,
be worried about
fantastic.
as well. So you're rolling. I'm just going to let you take it.
Appreciate that, Seth. We talked a little bit about voluntary stop sales. I want to expand on that a little bit because I do recognize there's an official process with some great guardrails to ensure consistency in application. But I think as Terry Hara kind of pointed out earlier, the notion of voluntary stop sale can be significant. It can have the same result, even though that's not the intent. And I think we would like a better understanding, or at least I would, on what guidance is given to inspectors on recommendation of a voluntary stop sale. Because if an inspector is dealing directly with a manager on site or someone who maybe doesn't really understand as well as we do, what those regulations are and the technical aspects of, fuel quality or what have you. They just hear someone who's an inspector that's, got an ID and is driving a state vehicle or whatever. They've told them, hey, you should really, really consider a stop sale here. I mean, they're more apt to do it than, and not really fully understand, what's at play there for that particular issue. So what, you don't have to maybe answer this in detail now, but when we're providing information on what the procedures are and what the SOP is, anything you can provide that kind of governs that communication on voluntary stop sales would I think really help to inform the advisory board on what that looks like on a day-to-day basis.
Certainly.
I'd like to jump in for just a second.
Please do, Tom.
The investigators go out pretty quickly on the priority ones, usually a couple days. When they suggest a voluntary stop sale, that's because they can look at the fuel in the jar and see there's something wrong with it. And so we want to get that stopped, sale of that fuel stopped, because it's probably hurting consumers.
Well, I mean, Tony, I do appreciate that. I think there's a reason ASTM standards exist. There's a reason, and some of those do speak to, the visual appearance of the fuel. But it can be incredibly subjective. I mean, especially if you look at biofuels, for example, biodiesel can, diesel products that meet ASTM standards can look very different and still be fine, So we don't always know what level of, understanding inspectors have in that scenario. We definitely don't have much understanding of what on-site personnel may know. I mean, that is a big variable there too. So I think that,
yeah, we can definitely get that information for you.
Yeah, we especially with diesel, bad fuel can cause a lot of damage.
Well, no, we would not disagree with that. And again, we want to know if we have a problem. We want to, and maybe the folks that participate in this board are, all fine, upstanding operators. I'm sure they are, right? So I think you're talking to people that want to do the right thing. That may not be the case with all sites you go and inspect, right? We understand that. Just like we understand that, we may all update our contact information religiously because we want to be assured that the right folks are getting contacted, but that may not always be the case. So we want to keep that in mind that, the inspectors are walking into very different situations. But that means that the procedures that guide their activities need to kind of account for all those different variables or possibilities. And then, like I said earlier, the example Terry gave of that voluntary stop sale being communicated on site, true that's a problem internally for us, right? We have to ensure we have good communication within our organizations, granted, but at the same time, if the process itself relies on just communicating between the manager at the store and the inspector in order to shut that site down, I mean, that's kind of that is in effect the same as a stop sale order in their end result. So we want to take that into consideration when we understand what procedures inspectors are following.
In my case, the three that I had, one we didn't know about for 2 weeks. We went out, found nothing wrong with the fuel at all, so we reopened it. The other two, we went out immediately, and the diesel, and they were all three on, two were on diesel, one's on ethanol free, but the diesel just had bio in it with a treatment in it, so it looked different to the inspector than what normal diesel would look like, but it was 20% bio. So I do think that's, I think the inspector has to make the call on the, and because if it doesn't look normal, we want to go look at it, and that's exactly what we're after. We're after the TDLR to make sure everybody's doing things correctly. But the sooner we can know about it, the sooner we could go clear it or say, no, this is that, and never this is this. So, because all fuel anymore, you can buy so many different things, flavors to put in the tanks that all fuel does not look the same in a jar. So we just need to make sure that that training is always ongoing.
Yes, we can definitely get that information for you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions for Enforcement Division? Okay, we've hammered you guys enough. Really appreciate the presentation, the information. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Compliance Division. I think we've heard from him a little bit, but let's make it formal. Ford Strawn and Tim Faskey.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I guess everybody can hear me, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Anyway, my name is Tim Foskey, and I am the program supervisor for the F&Q program here at TDLR. And I'll be go ahead and giving the staff report for Compliance Division. Here first, we have the statistics looking at the fiscal year 2025 performance numbers that we have here. You know, the number of skimmer inspections conducted by the TDLR staff was 548. Number of skimmers removed by us was 39. Merchant reports received was 132. And then skimmers found by others was 151. And then the FCIC inspection requests that we do was 56. Technical inspections here, these technical inspections are handled on a basis as if enforcement needs some assistance or some help and has requested us to follow up and take care of some of these inspections for them. So in this past fiscal year, we've done fuel quality, we've done 8, and the fuel quality, we've done 88 of those. Does anybody have any questions about that, or we move on to the current projects?
Yeah, Tim, if you don't mind, spend a little bit more time talking about those again. So these fuel quantity inspections, these are not complaint driven, right? Because that would be Enforcement Division, or again, this is my confusion on the bifurcation there. So.
Right. No, what it is that if say enforcement has maybe there's somebody out during the, you know, they have some time off or whatever, or there's a concern where the location is at, or just they don't have somebody, or they're busy, you know, there's something may have come up. So what they do, they can contact us and say, hey, if you're in this area, could you swing by there and take care of this particular location? This is the complaint, and they give us the documentation. So then we get that information from them, and yes, we will go by there, and then we will do an inspection at that location, and it is complaint driven.
Okay, so it's more of a question of resources and available resources.
Correct. Yes.
The
Right.
agency using who they have available to inspect based on a complaint. Okay.
Right.
So are
Yeah.
these 88 fuel quantity inspections and 8 fuel quality inspections? Those are all referrals from enforcement for complaints?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Carry on, please.
Okay. And so we have here some of the current projects that we're working on. We're working with the GC on the final rules for related to the motor fuel stop sales. We're also helping edit the rules related to the examination. To the motor fuel quality standards that was just passed this past legislative session. That's along the 99th latitude, as well as rules for reporting skimmers to the FCIC when there is a skimmer that's found on a point of sale terminal other than the fuel pumps. We also are planning on starting up September 1, 2025. F&Q will begin implementing a risk-based type inspection in addition to responding to complaints. My manager, Michael Strawn, will discuss this into more detail at the end of my report. And let's see here. We are still working. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're working real closely with, obviously, the FCIC on inspections requests across the state. And I'm very confident that our reports play a key role into supporting arrest and assisting with prosecutions with the FCIC. Outreach. We have some outreach that we've been working on. FMQ continues to provide skimmer and fuel theft training across the state. We have one of our program specialists, Richard Bolton, who's leading the efforts. Demand for this training is constantly growing. We've received requests from other states. We recently had a session that we held out in Arkansas. We had the state of Louisiana reach out to us, so we're doing a training for them here in November. SAPA has reached out to us. Richard will be doing a presentation there this coming year. And this just, further strengthens our partnership and showcases FMQ's leadership in fraud prevention. This training that we offer, it covers key topics like skimmers, fuel theft detection, new rules updates, and basic DPR reporting. It also includes like a hands-on demo and tips for working with law enforcement and TDLR. FMQ's goal here is to make sure that industry professionals are confident, compliant, and ready to protect themselves and consumers. And below is a list of the trainings that provided by the FMQ staff this fiscal year. As you can see, the FMQ staff have been working closely with merchants, law enforcement, service technicians, and companies to keep skimmer reporting on track and to help support fraud prevention. We're quickly to respond to questions that come through the FMQ Tech Info inbox. And are constantly on the move, covering all of the 254 Texas counties. I've logged over 14,000 miles in the past few months to ensure that all complaints are handled properly and promptly, and provide on-site support and training statewide. So I'm very happy with the way that our training has really, like I said, sparked a lot of attention, and we've spent a lot of time this year trying to educate folks on reporting skimmers and all those good things. So I was going to turn it over now to Michael Ford. He will go over into more detail about our risk-based inspections, and then we can, take any questions or anything at that point, and go from there. Michael?
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Ford Strawn. I'm a manager for our Consumer Protection section in our Compliance Division. As you heard, there's been a focus in Texas on combating financial crimes, and the expansion of the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center, FCIC, and their duties speak to this. My section has been dedicated to protecting both the personal safety and the financial safety of citizens of Texas. At current, we've kind of fallen behind on that mark, being more consumer reaction than consumer protection in Texas. The reason for that is simply that the program was set up in the past to only perform a skimmer, sweep, or inspection based on a complaint received. As Tim mentioned, we've taken significant steps toward educating law enforcement, service technicians, and merchants alike in the past year on how to protect them and their customers from skimmers. The truth is that we can actually do more. You saw earlier in the presentation, we had removed 39 skimmers. In New York, recently, they performed a skimmer sweep in their area and found 67 skimmers in a single sweep. This is not a small issue. It is rampant, and it greatly impacts the lives of Texans when their life savings is drained overnight. We've recently kind of highlighted the success in working with one of the fuel merchants that are out there. They've invited out to us or to an area, and you saw last year we removed 39 skimmers in that total year. In one sweep, in coordination with them, voluntary, they asked us to come out. We found 15 within working with them. So there's a lot more skimmers out there. When we're asked to come out, complaint-based and everything else, we're on the back end. A lot of times they've been removed and everything else. And so in conjunction with that, needing to protect our citizens and everything else, we also recently obtained new inspection software, which allows us to more easily track data, create heat maps, and proactively identify and stop organized crime and skimmers. We hope to be able to limit the financial harm incurring to citizens of Texas, all while at the same time building trust with those citizens with our fuel merchants. We know in the past that if somebody is harmed at a merchant, they'll typically not want to go back there if they believe their credit card information was stolen from there. In addition to this, what we've seen out doing our skimmer sweeps and inspections is that about 20% of the merchants that we have are not registered with us. Therefore, all of that is culminating to say what you heard Tim say a while ago is beginning December 1st, 2025, so this year, our staff is looking to begin performing risk-based inspections on top of the complaint-driven. Now, this is just for skimmers. This is not fuel quality and fuel quantity complaints. That's handled by enforcement. But we often know where skimmers are located, and we see the same merchants being targeted over and over again. That can impact their bottom line with customers who feel they've been cheated out of their money. In the past, our hands have been tied to being able to be proactive to help that merchant stop their fuel dispensing devices from being targeted. And so instead, what we find is that when we've been working with fuel merchants, district managers, and being proactive, we're really finding these skimmers. As I highlighted, we found 15 coordinating with just one fuel merchant in a small little area. And we hope to be able to capitalize on that success. The legislature has highlighted the significance of financial crimes, and each device that we are missing is capable of stealing hundreds of individuals' financial data, if not thousands. So the impact of our inability to be out to work on the data that we have, utilizing that information to proactively remove skimmers is damaging to Texans. Now, the intent of this change is to promote consumer protection and work with our merchants as a team across the state. Again, this change is only to skimmers. It's not for fuel quality or quantity changes. Those are still going to be complaint-based only. What our team is focused on is detecting and removing skimming devices, reducing fraud and protecting our consumers out there, and supporting businesses with an education-first compliance. So a lot of what we've talked about today was, how these processes work. Are we immediately sending somebody to enforcement? My team, when they're out there, we like to think of ourselves as the good guys, right? We're going to be out on site. We're out there performing a skimmer sweep. We end up seeing a small violation. We see even unregistered individuals, our merchants out there. We're working, and we've already been doing this. We've been giving 60 or 90 days and working with individuals to help them to come into compliance. That's very important for us to make sure that we're bringing people into compliance, because that's the ultimate goal. Whether it's enforcement or it's us, we want to educate, we want to bring people into compliance and have this industry be professional and present itself the best it can towards the general public. We've even taken measures to identify when we're going out for this, if the merchant we're going to visit has an RFI, a request for information from our licensing department. So maybe they submitted an application, it got hung up, it got kicked back because they didn't submit something or licensing needed more information. Our staff's actually stopping and taking the time to help them figure out how to remediate that and get their application through the entire process. So when I say that we're educating first, we're trying to bring people into compliance, that's exactly what we mean to do it. Again, we're giving that 60 to 90 days to get corrections made and sent to us, because we're not looking to send everybody to enforcement. We're trying to just help people figure out how to do this. We've had great success with that as well. Something I heard a lot in this meeting so far, and I want to be sure that we address, is that in making these changes, first and foremost, what you're going to see from us is transparent and constant communication with our industry. What that entails is that we will actually be here in the coming days posting a what to expect during a skimmer inspection or sweep guide on our website. This is something I've done in multiple of my programs across the board, so that if you have a TDLR inspector on site, you know what they're going to be looking for, what documentation they're going to be providing you. Are they going to give you a business card? Who are they contacting? All that type of information is going to be available directly on our website as a guide. We want to be as transparent as possible on that. We will also be providing guidance on the inspection types, the definitions that we look at, and the criteria for public view, so you all can see that. And that should give you some insight into how the planning, execution of our inspections and their data is being used as well. Again, I want to be as transparent as possible about this. We're out there trying to partner with you all to stop you all from being victims of credit card skimmers or fuel theft at the same time. So part of our communication going out is we plan on having multiple newsletters sent out to you all before the December 1 go live date to get this message out to as many associations, as many licensees as possible. And also, we want to be clear that our staff, we have developed strict SOP guidelines, standard operating procedures on limits of their skimmer sweeps and what their focus will be when they're out there. And we're happy to make those available as well. All in all, our intended results for this are to provide an opportunity to assist our businesses proactively, ensure devices meet registration, they're documented appropriately with DPR, device performance reviews, and we want to address these risks that we have out there with skimmers. Ultimately, as I said, my section's name is consumer protection. I want to make sure that that is what our focus is doing. I have a highly talented group of individuals that work for me. They've been doing FMQ related work for decades. They are smart. They understand how to identify these, fuel thefts or credit card skimmers and the equipment. And hopefully we're going to build public trust with you all and with the citizens of Texas by reducing the fraud that's out there. We hope to give you all support with RFIs that you're getting from licensing. And we want to ultimately give merchants a chance to resolve any issues before they're sent to enforcement, before any penalties or fees occur. And I want to remind you all in closing that a skimmer on site is never a violation on the merchant, right? So if we're out there and we're doing a skimmer sweep and we're inspecting your fuel dispensing devices for a skimmer, if we find one, that's not a gotcha. It's not a finding on the business. We're there to help you. We want to remove that. We're trying to protect your point of sale terminals and credit card machines from those the harm that they're receiving over there. And so, in closing, we're trying to support the industry overall, protect citizens of Texas, and that's why what we plan to roll out is the risk-based skimmer inspections across the state come December 1st. That pretty much concludes my update. I did want to add in one little piece. Earlier, you all were asking about examination information. I reached out to our team lead for examinations in our Education Examination Division, Ann Pascal. I was able to get that information. I sent it over to Angelica, and she'll be emailing that out to you all here shortly as well. With that being said, that concludes my updates, and Tim and I are open to any questions you may have.
Thanks, Tim and Ford. Any questions for them from my group?
I have a question. As far as tracking down the people that are installing the skimmers, are those prosecutions handled in Texas, or is that a federal issue?
As far as I know, they're being handled in Texas. I don't know if there are any federal cases that have been brought to our attention. There are times we work in tandem with federal law enforcement as part of investigations. I'm sure that anything that they would have in their findings would be handled federally, but everything that Tim and our team is typically doing is handled here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Ford, we talked a little bit earlier about SOPs. Again, as operators, we're approached potentially by inspectors from each division. I think we want a better understanding of what playbooks each group is following, and what we'd really like is some assurance that there's consistency each time, right? And so I think I'm seeing opportunities for inconsistencies, just either a knowledge gap or a division operates within a division. So can you help us understand? I think
Absolutely.
there's probably different SOPs if I'm just reading the room.
Correct.
But help us understand how similar or different those might be, and how that can. I just want recognition that can affect the end result for the operator, right? And so I want to have a larger discussion, maybe not today, but how do we kind of get those SOPs in line so that regardless of what type of inspector comes to the site, the processes, are standardized and similar and get the similar result.
Excellent question, Mr. Harris. So number one, as I detailed, our goal is to be transparent when it comes to the skimmer side of things. There are separate standard operating procedures for how enforcement is going to handle an investigation versus how we're going to handle a technical inspection when we're on site. There is always an opportunity for collaboration between divisions, and I think this is something that our staff has done greatly. We've partnered with our enforcement team on trainings at Source University in the past. We'll continue to do those types of things. We want to train them up. We want to learn from them as much as they learn from us. And I do think there's an opportunity to always make sure that our procedures and what we're providing and what we're expecting to follow when we're out there should mirror as closely as possible, where applicable, to enforcements as well, to give you all some semblance of, to your point, TDLR inspector or investigator look the same to you. And so when they come out, our processes are going to deviate, as you heard Jessica talking about and everything, but where we can, we should make them similar. But at the end of the day, what I was talking about is that I want to make sure that our skimmer side of things, which I control, is as transparent as possible. And when we put out that document about what to expect during a skimmer inspection and what our procedures kind of look like and what data we're utilizing, we're hoping that is going to give you that idea, that look behind the curtains as to what we're looking for, what you should expect as far as how we're going to present ourselves, how we're going to identify what documentation we plan on leaving you every step of the way. And so that's the transparency we hope to give there. I hope I answered your question as best I can.
Yeah. And again, I do want to greatly commend the department for all the really great work you guys have done on skimmers, from the SCIC to integration and training. It says a lot when other states are coming and asking you, help us learn, right? So excellent work. It's fantastic. I think it's really paying dividends with respect to what we're seeing out in the field. So definitely kudos in that regard. I should have clarified. I mean, my question was, I kind of take skimmers and skimmer inspections and I kind of put that in a separate category. I'm really more referencing the quantity and quality.
When we're out assisting them is what you're referencing? Yes, sir. So yeah, I mean, typically for anything that we do, we're going to follow our FMQ manual that we have here on our side. But our staff is available to, as you heard, assist enforcement. If we're doing so, we are going to follow the same procedures, same processes, utilize the same tools and information that they do. And our team, my FMQ team, works closely with the individuals over in enforcement for, as you heard, training, everything else. But absolutely, we can look to make sure that there are no deviations that are out there. We're continually trying to work with them. They're extremely busy, as you've heard, to help them wherever we can. And if that includes education, that includes our assistance physically out in the field. And as I mentioned earlier, if that includes us bringing back feedback to the department, that's what Tim, myself, and our team are here for, is to be those liaisons to the industry. So I hear you loud and clear. I will get with Jessica and Art, who's the manager over those guys, and we will see what we can provide you on that. And we'll double check to make sure we're as aligned as possible in our processes.
Great, really appreciate it. I have some questions on the new risk-based approach, but just in general, you mentioned that the skimmer inspections are not gotchas. I appreciate that. I get it. That's really the right way to proceed. But you do have rules on dispenser security requirements. And so when are the requirements under 97.31 inspected? And when are you holding operators up to ensuring that they're meeting those standards in that rule?
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent question. So Michael Strong, Compliance Division. We're obviously going to be out there, and if we see somebody who is unlicensed, we see somebody who's unregistered, we see a major fuel leak, there's actions we are going to have to take during that time. However, what I mentioned earlier, that we are going to be operating under strict procedures within the risk-based guidelines, is that what you heard me talk about is that we are currently and already doing, when our team is out there, If we find an issue, our team is giving 60 to 90 days to remedy an issue. If there is questions over security that needs to be on the device, we're helping them figure out how to secure their devices. Our point and our goal is to educate those on what compliance looks like and how they can achieve it. And that's where our team has been delivering already. So really nothing different from what we're already doing out there. So if you're not having a problem with this, you're continuing to not have a problem with us, because that's the actions we're currently taking, is giving time to the fuel merchants that are out there to come into compliance. Now, if somebody fails to come into compliance and just doesn't want to work with us, our hands are going to be tied. We will end up sending that to enforcement. But again, the primary focus here is to work with merchants to help them understand security needs that are out there, how to prevent unauthorized access into their cabinets. And so when we say it's not a gotcha, we realize that we may come across violations out there, but the procedures and the information you'll see online are going to support what I'm saying as well, that our actions are to give merchants a chance to fix those and to come in compliance before any action is taken to send them to enforcement.
Okay, so on the risk-based, unless anybody else has any questions on those comments or points. Again, I don't want to monopolize the discussion here. On the risk-based inspection plan, so can you give us a sense of what parameters or data are on the inlet side of that decision-making process, and how you're determining where you're going to devote the resources?
Absolutely. And the data is going to really dictate where the resources are centered at, and based on our availability at times as well. So our inspection software is able to account for the location, time. We're hoping to identify additional trends. Are there specific times of the month, the 1st, 15th, the end of the month, that we start seeing skimmers? Is it around holidays? On top of that, as you heard, we are going to have heat maps. We already produce these, but are a very manual intensive process for us. But these heat maps are able to show us, where we're seeing it, whether it's I-35 corridor, a specific, types of cabinets that are being attacked. A lot of different diversity in the data that we can really parse out. So we'll be in our infancy with the data and what we're working with. But those are all things that are on the table. Anything that we can look at to work smarter, even down to if we start seeing a specific interval in which we start seeing skimmers at certain locations, that may be a clue that, hey, every 1 or 2 months we see it. And Tim and myself, there's probably 10, 15 addresses we could name off the top of our head that we see skimmers at repeatedly. Once a month, I know I'm going to see a skimmer there. And every time that we're able to remove a skimmer, especially a deep insert skimmer, it is very expensive for these criminals, and we're hurting their pocketbook as well. And that's something that we work in tandem with FCIC, any of their data, any of their needs as well, to coordinate these efforts and to hopefully identify, track down, and prevent individuals from being harmed by these skimmers.
Are these primarily complaint-driven metrics? I mean, what other information do you have other than complaints, I guess, is kind of.
So we have excellent question. And we have a long history of complaints, as you well know, from doing this for years. And then just the last year, there's, several hundred, I think it's 648 different complaints that they've looked at. So we have a significant amount of data that we're collecting. And so our prior data that we're using and going into this is based on that historical data. And in the future, as we start identifying things, as we start moving across the state, we are going to be utilizing all of that data. And again, we don't want to disclose everything that we're looking at to the criminals that are out there within this meeting, but we're utilizing all of that data across the board to make an informed decision however we can.
Okay, and the actual on-site inspections you reference here, that ensuring sites are properly registered and have a DPR. So will that always be the case? Anytime you dispatch to do one of these focused, or I'm sorry, risk-based inspections, there'll always be a check on whether or not the site is properly licensed and has a recent DPR.
So at times there may not be, and I just want to caveat that typically, yes, we're going to talk to them about what we're doing there, you know, meet them, greet them, leave them with information. That's something we always do. And so in doing so, we're also going to be talking to them about that. There are times when we are working with our, you know, intelligence center, with local PD, or the federal law enforcement that we mentioned earlier. And there's a skimmer sweep performed where there isn't a lot of talking or anything else. It's just checking these cabinets for skimmers and moving on to the next as quickly as possible. So there are times there, but for what we're typically doing, we are going to talk to people and inform them.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know all the data points you're using on the inlet side, but I mean, you have a record of registered facilities, but I think you also know that there's unregistered facilities out there, and you can't really target the unregistered because you don't necessarily know about them.
Well, and Mr. Harris, that's actually something that we're hoping that this will help us with is in the past, if we were, and again, I'm trying to limit how much we expose, you know, things that could impact investigations in the future. So please bear with me on that.
Sure.
But in the past, because we were complaint-based only, if I had to send somebody from El Paso to Amarillo, my West Texas person, and they had to stop for fuel 3 times on the way, they're not able to stop or ask questions or do anything at any of the merchants they stop at. In this scenario, they would be able to. You know, they can also, you know, look at those things. If they are heading that direction, they can look at where we had a history in the past, what, you know, what is typically on my route that may be an escalated risk for us to look at, and they'll be able to stop in. But it'll help us identify merchants who are not registered with us and bring them into compliance as well. And again, that's the ultimate goal, is trying to get everybody, you know, licensed, registered, having DPRs done, having our service technicians and our merchants educated on all of these threats that exist out there. And so to the best of our ability, that's exactly what we want to do. Our actions that you've seen so far with the trainings we're doing with merchants, with service techs, law enforcement, and anybody in other states is paramount to that and speaks to it. And that is exactly what our mission is. And we're hopeful that in these changes, we're going to be able to further accomplish that mission moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Tim Foskey, I just want to jump in there and say one little thing. Yeah, according to Mr. Harris's question there is that, you know, locations that don't have a DPR, you know, that is a big concern because that tells me that that facility has not been checked by a licensed service technician or anyone. So there's no telling what could be on those fuel pumps, right? So if they're not being followed through with that DPR, then my concern, even with my guys, is, hey, this is probably a hot spot for possible skimmers, right? Because no one's even looked into those pumps. So something to think about as well.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes.
Any more
Michael,
questions for this? Yep,
Michael, this is Nathan Wickerman. I have one comment. Could you address this to maybe a few of us that are not on top of this, but for the merchant, what is the compliance that they need to address for the pumps that y'all look out and see? So what compliance is there for the merchant on these skimmers that they're supposed to have on their pumps?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in and just say that, you know, there's either they can have the seals, they can have the lighting, they can have, and all those requirements are listed in our rules, right? I don't have them right here in front of me. My apologies on that, but it would, I'm trying to go through them in my mind real quick. And it could be EMV. So a lot of people are converting over to EMV equipped device. So that is one, you know, they're keeping a logbook or something that has to deal with, I don't even know, I don't think it's a logbook, but they need to have seals on their pumps. The other is going to be the lighting or, you know, recording element or taking photos and things of that nature of the around the fuel pumps themselves. Right. I'm kind of drawing a blank on a couple of the others, but there was a total of of 5 or 6, and then 3 of those needed to be applied to those pumps at that location.
Okay.
Jason,
Ron,
wouldn't it
okay.
like 2 of 8 things or something like that? You had to do
Yeah.
list of
Right.
8,
It's in
basically.
97.31 is the actual rule section. So
Yeah. Then it also talked about locks and things like that as well. You know, having a different type of lock, except for the locks that that normally come with the fuel pumps. And
yeah, Nathan, that was a big part of this work group. a couple of years
And
ago.
Mr.
Work
Winkleman,
through-
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Work through all those things, making it easily achievable by offering a menu of opportunities, right? Rather than just a rigid, you must do this, this, and this. So,
Right. Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Winkleman,
Yes, sir.
Michael Strawn, I just wanted to further up. I'm familiar with exactly what your business is, but if you have questions or need assistance with any regulations or requirements and how to achieve them, please reach out to myself or Tim, and we are happy to have one of our guys stop by, talk to you, or set a meeting with you to go over those standards. But as Mr. Harris said, 9731 is going to be where those regulations for device security lays at.
any more questions? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate it. Agency update. Charlotte's been waiting patiently.
Yes, so presiding officer members, my name is Charlotte Milder. I am the director of the compliance division, but today I get to fill the role of agency updates for the executive office. The legislative session, it brought some organizational changes with the state lottery and charitable bingo coming to TDLR. Those agencies are no longer their own and will now be under TDLR. And we have hired a transition team that is helping us incorporate those new programs. This is one of the biggest growths we've had, I think, in forever. We almost doubled in size. We also got the residential solar retailers, which is another program that came to TDLR, and we now oversee 42 programs total. As referenced earlier in the meeting, we have the new system called TDLR Core, and it is our licensing system replacement project. We currently have multiple systems that allow some programs to perform tasks online and others that don't. It's about a 3-year project, and it will consist of several waves and programs we brought in at different times, and we'll keep everybody updated as the project progresses. And then also, highlights from this last fiscal year, TDLR passed over 1 million licensees, people and equipment. So that was a good and daunting highlight. So that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Charlotte?
I have a question, Terry Maxey. The lottery, of course, impacts a lot of us. What effect does that have on these programs? I mean, I understand that y'all brought people over, but can you just kind of talk about how y'all manage something so large, and does that affect any other programs, or does that use up any resources or anything like that?
It shouldn't use up any of our resources at all. In fact, we got more resources because we are now one with an entire agency being brought into our agency. So we have more resources to do the things that we need. We are in the very early stages because we had about 6 weeks notice to get things transferred over. Get everyone paid and get our computer systems to talk, which they still can't, change email addresses, get them into our systems. It's been very complicated, but it has not used any of our resources because we were able to hire people from the outside to be our transition team to make all of those things happen. So it is a process. It is something that we are working through, but it should not affect your program in any way.
Thank you, Charlotte. Moving on the agenda, it has been some time since we've met, and so we haven't really been working within our work groups or subgroups within the board. So now it's the time to kind of open it up for discussion on, how we might want to move people around, or if anybody has interest in other work groups. So Angelica is going to kind of run us through which ones we have and participation on those.
Okay, just real quick. And I'm also gonna, sorry, I have side conversations going on over here that keeps beeping, so I apologize for that beeping if y'all hear it. I'm also gonna chat about this topic with Michael because Mr. Thompson had some suggestions for work groups, and since he's not here, he was able to chat with Michael about those suggestions. But there are two work groups that we need to replace Mr. Nance since he resigned not too long ago. So I can wait until after we discuss the topics, or we can assign someone to those now. I just don't know if any of the topics that Mr. Thompson had will go into those two work groups. But Michael, do you want to talk about yours first, and then we can do assignments?
Sure, yeah. So Michael Bostic, AGC here. So Adam Thompson, he couldn't be here today for health reasons. He reached out to me to request that either a specific work group be created to address service technician issues, or in the alternative, charge the rules, compliance, and standards work group with looking at issues related to service technicians, specifically service technician licensing, device maintenance activities, and DPRs. He provided some more information about that, but I won't put words in his mouth when he's not here. But generally, that was his request.
Angelica, this has been a really long time since we've talked about these. Do you have a document that shows the current work group?
I do. I can go over that real quick.
members?
So for enforcement, we have Terry Maxey, Seth Stevens, Carlos Garza, Keisha Esqueda, and then ex-officio member Jeffrey Bond. For the rules, compliance, and standards, which may be where we put Mr. Thompson's suggestion, I have Keisha Esqueda, Terry Hera, Adam Thompson, and you, Presiding Officer Jason Harris. And for skimmer, we have Carlos Garza, Terry Hera, Nathan Winkleman, and our ex-officio member Sergeant Bond. And for continuing education, we had Adam Thompson, Terry Maxey, and Nathan Winkleman. So for skimmer and continuing education, we would just need someone to replace Mr. Nance.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Michael, is it your assessment from talking to Adam that his issues were more related to the standards of testing and training for technicians, and not really necessarily continuing education matters?
Yes, in my opinion, his concerns would fall under the rules, compliance, and standards work group.
Okay, but opening it up to the larger group, I mean, does anyone see any benefit to having a separate work group devoted just for technicians and issues related to technicians?
No, I just think it
I
should be a
don't.
focal point of you know, the rules group or however you want to do it. But I think it can be a focal topic of that group. I mean, I think it's a legitimate concern making sure we have enough technicians.
Yeah, I agree with Terry. I think that can be folded into one of the groups. I don't see the need just for a specific technician group.
Okay. And I didn't write down all the names you said. I know
That's
that
okay,
I'm
so-
on the rules,
so-
compliance, and standards. Adam's on there as well, right?
Yes, sir. So I have Adam, you, Presiding Officer Mr. Harris, Terry Hera, and Keisha Esqueda is who I have as
So
those four. And we can only have
I think-
4 because 5 would make a quorum. So
Right. And so, because Adam's already a member of that, I think it makes sense to fold those topics in with that work group. That's my personal opinion. I don't know if everyone agrees.
Okay.
Do we need to make that a formal vote or anything like that?
no formal vote is needed. We can add that topic to that work group and Ford. I'm not sure if he's on here. Is that something that your group could potentially handle, Ford? Tim?
Sorry, my computer's a little slow to unmuting.
It's okay.
Michael Strawn, Compliance Division. Yes, ma'am, we can look to handle that.
Okay, so what we do need to for sure do is find replacements for Wes Nance on those two.
For skimmer and continuing education. Continuing education, sorry.
So Wes was the member of the board for service providers, right? So we don't have a replacement for him yet. I think, continuing education is an item that really applies directly to, you know, that member of the board. So I would, at least I would recommend that, you know, whoever replaces Mr. Nance would probably be good if they were on that work group. So do we
We don't
need
have
to,
to. Sorry,
yeah,
I
do
was
we
gonna-
need to
didn't
name
have to
somebody
put
now,
that.
or can we wait for that seat to be filled and then
We
talk
can
to them
wait,
about
yeah.
it? Okay.
Yeah, we just put this on there as like a placeholder to discuss, possibly
Yeah.
replacing him, but no, we don't have to do it today. We could put this on the next agenda item when we do have someone to replace him, and we could put him in there.
And just to update everyone, we talked a little bit before the meeting actually started, but can you update everybody with respect to how that process is going and what, when we might expect
so-
to have somebody?
Mr. Nance did put in his resignation in May. So we did post his position, and we're in the process of receiving applications to potentially replace Mr. Nance on the board. Hopefully December, January. After that, those applications have gone through the whole review process. So hopefully by our next meeting, we'll have his replacement.
Those of you that are serving on work groups, you know, do you have a desire to switch it up and serve on others? Or is there anyone that's not serving on a work group that wants to? I mean, I'm opening up to the floor for discussion on what everybody wants. I mean, our options are leave everything alone or change some things around. I'm open to anything.
I think I'm on the boards that I need to be on because I have a lot of knowledge in those two boards.
Okay, fantastic.
And what I could do, Mr. Harris, is I could send this list out to the board, have them look at it. and
Yeah,
if
that
they
might be
want
helpful.
to change it up, I
It's
can
been-
get with you and let you know who
Okay.
wants to change, and maybe at the next meeting, we can move some folks around.
That's fine.
Yep.
It's been a really long time. I think it's the challenge.
Yeah.
Everything good? Everyone good with that approach to just waiting till you get the list and then giving it some thought? And if you have things you want to do, just bring that up to Angelica. We can approach it later.
I suggest that's a good idea as well.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Appreciate that. Okay.
I think that's a good idea. I'm just curious, is there any sort of cadence in which we're supposed to be meeting as a work group? Because it doesn't, I mean, I don't feel like we've met over the last year, have we?
No, it's been 14 months or so, and we talked about that too. I think we're trying to get back into a rhythm of having frequent meetings, and so I think a lot of work groups are kind of looking at that as well.
A lot
Sorry,
of work
boards.
groups will meet if there's actual topic to discuss. If there's nothing really to bring to the work group, then we're not going to be meeting, obviously. But obviously, if there is something to assign to work, like we did earlier with the suggestion from Mr. Thompson, then obviously that work group will meet here soon.
Right. So I know on the rules work group, at least there were a couple bills that need to be incorporated, and I heard that mentioned in someone's presentation. So at what point should we be working to review incorporating those bills into the rules?
Michael Bostic, AGC here. Actually, you beat me to it. So right now, so one of the topics I have proposing is that the Rules Compliance and Standard Work Group conduct a preliminary review of the rules implementing bills passed during the 88th and 89th legislative session at this point. Ideally, I'd like that group to meet within the next month to give a recommendation on the rules in their current state.
So Keisha, we'll have staff reach out to that work group to get something scheduled here soon.
But Keisha, back to the topic of, you know, what prompts a meeting. I mean, we can kind of drive that bus too, right? I mean, if any of the board members have any reason to feel like it's time to have a meeting, I mean, they can get with Angelica and discuss that, and we can move forward with having a meeting, even if there's not, you know, an outside prompt from, you know, a new rule or something
Right.
of that nature. I mean, that's, you know, kind of why we exist.
Yeah, I just think I just heard a lot of, you know, feedback on transparency between enforcement and compliance. And I wonder if there's an opportunity for the work group to provide some more concrete feedback ongoing and have a more collaborative relationship with those departments.
That's a great point, and I think we've had a lot of discussion on SOPs and procedures in this meeting. I think I would like to formalize that to a degree, and maybe it is a good opportunity for the enforcement work group to kind of take all that information in as far as, what are, provide us with the actual SOPs so that, that group can be informed about, what those procedures are and bring that to the board for larger discussion on, continuity. And I want to say that we understand that there are people within the department that are extremely knowledgeable on, issues related to what this board oversees or assists with, I should say. But I think as operators, we have a big opportunity to, help ensure that the knowledge we have informs the decisions made by the department with respect to procedures or technical matters and that sort of thing. I mean, it's the good thing about the TDLR is they realize that, there's benefit to having these meetings that we're having right now. It's these discussions so that, we can be informed on their processes. They can be informed on, technical matters that improve overall the experience for everyone. So I think that's the way to go, but I'm open to hearing from people both on the board and in the department about, how we should go about that process of discussing SOPs and sharing feedback on them.
Yeah, Jason, Terry, Maxey, it is important because the disconnect here that we all are scared of is you have this enforcement group that has a certain understanding of how we operate or how things go, and we have another reality we live in, and things like a cashier or somebody interfacing with an inspector. I mean, that's a thing that scares us as an owner. We're very, very interested in complying with the law and things like that, but how some of those particular things go are very important. The mail, I hate to say this, post office people are great and all that kind of stuff, but frankly, getting things in the mail in Uvalde, Texas is not very reliable. And most communication, contemporary communication is done electronically. And, some of these things end up being barriers to compliance, to the very thing that we're trying to accomplish. And so understanding more about that, thinking about best practices, I think things like how the website, how we interface with the website, all of these things are sort of obstacles that kind of make the road a little bit rockier than it needs to be sometimes. So I'm open to any kind of discussion, sharing, contribution, however, we can accomplish that, whatever the agency is, interested in, I guess.
Just to make it as clear as possible, if it hadn't been already, if there are written SOPs, we'd like to see them. I think it's kind of the summation of the discussions at this point. So how we facilitate that, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Is there a procedural way we need to follow, or can folks from those divisions just simply send things to Angelica and she shares them with us?
Presiding Officer Harris, I'm reaching out to staff to see if maybe that's something that we can just send to the work groups. I'm not really sure. I'd like to get back to you on that so I can talk to Jessica and forward and see if that's something that we can do.
And so we're discussing so I'm clear here, are we discussing a charge to the enforcement work group for something specific to study and make a recommendation on, or are we having?
I guess so, Michael.
SOPs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the appropriate way to handle it. That's kind of the idea about work groups, is they focus on specific topics and research them and get back to the board in general about what they found. So in that respect, it makes a lot of sense to handle it that way.
I think that would be a good charge to the enforcement work group.
Great, let's charge them then.
Yes.
Okay, aside from that, moving on to planning for our next board meeting. And so I think we're on to something with respect to the charge we've just identified for the enforcement work group. I think we will need a meeting subsequent to that to discuss their findings and understand, how we might serve to inform or contribute to the understanding of the procedures followed by inspectors. And then it sounds like we're about to have work for the rules, compliance, and standards work group as well. So I think we were talking about maybe having a December or January timeframe meeting. Is that right, Angelica?
I'm sorry. So I know that the work group wanted to meet within the next month. I don't know how soon after that the full board needs to meet, but I will poll you for sure. Let's just make sure we can get the work groups to meet. And then
I think
you'll receive a polling email from me, just like we did this one.
okay. So right now
It'll
we just
be-
need to identify topics. And so we've got two, right? SOPs and rules. Anything else that any of the board members want be added to a future agenda?
And as always, you're always welcome to call me, email me with those
Yes.
suggestions as well. Mhm.
Sure. Okay. I think that concludes our agenda because we've already talked about date and time. So I think we can end this thing, move to adjournment. As long as there's no other discussion on any topics that were already on the agenda.
Jason, Terry Maxey, one thing that is a just to throw in there for y'all to consider talking about or presenting on is, I think Laura talked about it briefly, but I really would like to understand what the intent is of the online portal interface. I mean, we've had a lot of problems with it. I can just speak personally to that. So it seems like there would be, someone can say, okay, this is the vision, or this is how it's going to be, 3 years from now or whatever. And, just kind of talk about that a little bit. I don't think it's probably top secret or anything, but at least that gives some indication of what they're doing. And it also gives us an opportunity to say, hey, just think about this. The other agencies do something or whatever. So I would just throw that out there as something that maybe they could present on at some point, whether it's in a committee meeting or at the next full board meeting.
So in software development, they use what's called roadmaps. And I think that's what you're getting to, what's the roadmap and what are the milestones and kind of what are those planned improvements and what's the phase in schedule, that sort of thing. Is that what you're wanting?
Yep. Yeah, I think so. I think we'd like to, we wouldn't be doing our job here if we, didn't say anything about it. And then the end product comes out and we had 3 ideas or 3 things we should have just, offered up in the middle of all this when it comes to, how you register, how you interface with the agency or something. So I'm not saying it's a big deal, but I think it's something that seems appropriate for us to at least to have some insight on.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is we've been advised on what's going on with development of I'm trying to remember what she called it. Core, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, the core.
We really haven't been approached to provide input, in that respect. So is
Right.
that fair to say? That's what your
Sure.
comment is, Taylor? Okay. All right.
Yeah, at least tell us what
it's a valid
we
one.
can expect in the future, and if we have some ideas, we can sort of throw them up against the wall. But I mean, I think I would at least like to be informed about what they're going to be doing to make it better.
I wouldn't disagree
Michael
that it
Boston,
kind of
thank you.
sounds like what the kind of thing that this board exists for, right? And so it's
Mhm.
probably a very fair point.
I would phrase that agenda item as an update concerning online licensing software.
Sure.
But maybe more than an update. I think Terry's getting to the point that, we would like to see the roadmap and understand what the goals are so that we can fulfill our existence and provide, our feedback and, ideas about how to improve the system. So it's a little bit more than an update, I think, is what Terry's recommending.
update,
Yeah.
recommendation in that case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's learn about it.
Great, Terry, appreciate that. Okay. Really appreciate everybody's time.